What's up, New York? Welcome back to another episode of New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all that is sports. A couple weeks off here in the summer, but we are back and we are ready to kick it into high gear with training camp almost getting set to get underway. Rookies actually in training camp, which is great. But there's been an interesting series on HBO involving the New York Giants, and some might wonder if they've revealed too much on the show. What are my thoughts on this new groundbreaking thing for HBO? Not just the training camp Hard Knocks, we're getting the offseason Hard Knocks. The Jets and Davante Adams? Did Aaron Rodgers actually reunite with his old friend? And should the Jets be willing to go all out to get a second wide receiver to help Garrett Wilson? We'll talk Knicks. Jalen Brunson wants to take less money, and they got a good draft with Tyler Kolek and Kevin McCullough. We'll talk Yankees and Mets getting set to begin the second half tomorrow. Both teams are kind of going in opposite directions, but we'll talk about that. We also will talk about the Liberty, 21-4 in their first 25 games on the Olympic break. We'll talk soccer. We'll talk golf. Keegan Bradley hosting the Ryder Cup, NHL free agency. All that and more coming up next here on New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all those sports. See you in a minute. And, of course, thank you once again for tuning in this week to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio. Ricky Keeler here. Finally get to be back. Had a lot going on last couple weeks, 4th of July, other company stuff. You can tell voice not so great, so pardon that for the time being. But we're going to get through it. We're going to power through. I want to remind you can follow us on many of our social media platforms, X, IG, Facebook, TikTok. And be sure, of course, we're on our 10-year anniversary. Go to iesportsradio.com. Check out the new shows. We got a new show premiering tonight, our St. Louis show, which is going to be awesome, 10 p.m. Eastern. So you want to stay tuned for that. If you miss any of our live shows, you can always go back to the Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Chances are you're going to find this show. You can also go to our website. We have pages for each show, such as this one, iesportsradio.com/New York State of Sports. If you want to interact with me throughout the show, feel free to comment here on YouTube, or you can tweet me. Tweet the show at NY State Sports IE, or you can tweet myself at Rickinator555. Be happy to hear from you throughout the next hour or so. So before we dive into Hard Knocks, we got to pay some hard bills. So before we do that, let's talk about our sponsors, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky and Seal the Deal Wax Seals. You will hear about these great, awesome companies, and we'll be right back to talk about Hard Knocks and the New York Giants. You're listening to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all that is sports. We will be right back after this.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
And thank you to both of our sponsors, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. It's been really hot in New York, so you need a snack for the beach, especially if you're going to Jersey or something like that. Why don't you go get some awesome beef jerky? There's some cool spicy flavors, some regular flavors as well. You want to check that out. And, of course, it's wedding season. Get those invitations sealed up with Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. We're going to have a lot of fun doing that. So thank you for tuning in again for today. I see a couple of people here in the chat. Jen B., the Land of the Cleveland Show. Happy to have you aboard. Ralph Calise, Pittsburgh pal. Glad to hear from you again as well. So let's talk Giants. And, of course, we're going to do a big show next week, which we'll reveal at the end of the segment, where we get into all the training camp and everything like that, top 5 storylines for the year. I want to focus specifically on Hard Knocks. Of course, this is a new series that is on HBO Max on every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Of course, everybody's familiar with Hard Knocks and familiar with training camp and what they do there. This series is now kind of taken inside the front office where we can see the free agent process with Joe Schoen and Brian Dable and scouts and everything like that, and see everything that happens behind the scenes that we hear about from Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, and the likes of those insiders, but we don't get to see. And they're about 3 episodes in. And overall, I'm a fan of the show, but I think there's still some concerns about how much the Giants have chosen to reveal. Let's keep this in mind. The Giants have control of what goes out there. This isn't a running camera in the NFL and NFL films, and they get to pick what they want. That's not the case. The Giants ultimately can decide, hey, don't air that. So a lot of what you are seeing is, in a sense, sanctioned by the Giants. And there's been some cool moments watching Joe Schoen and Dan Morgan complete the Brian Burns trade. I thought it was pretty cool. We've seen the Brian Dable comments with the quarterbacks at the combine, whether it be Jane Daniels, Drake May. We know they really love Drake May. Caleb Williams. Kind of seeing them quiz themselves through that process was interesting. But ultimately, I think I look at it as the Saquon Barkley issue. And what you're clearly seeing throughout this documentary, John Mara wanted to keep Saquon Barkley. We know this. It's obvious. And it's clear the Giants right now need a superstar. They need a guy that they can market. And right now, I would think with Barkley gone, that's Kayvon Thibodeau. But when you look at the financials, and what Joe Schoen was trying to explain is like, you are not going to give Saquon the big bucks. The Giants were never going to do that. I think Schoen was surprised that he went to the Eagles. That's why you heard Schoen tell the agent, is it somebody in the division so I can mentally prep myself for what's about to happen? They were never going to match that money, nor do they want to match that money. They're not tied to Saquon Barkley. John Mara is. John Mara is trying to sell seats. John Mara is trying to sell tickets. And in the end, if this doesn't work and Saquon's a star in Philadelphia and wins a championship, Joe Schoen's going to have a lot of egg on his face. I think he realizes that. But I think you look at Joe Schoen right now and you're seeing, and I was talking about this to the people here at the network when we have our chats, you kind of see Joe Schoen have multiple personalities, which I guess you kind of have to have as an NFL GM. There was a scene at the Combine where they're talking about how to prepare themselves for the media. And I think everybody knew that happened, but to actually see it is a little, I won't say alarming, but you kind of don't need to see that sometimes. You guys want to just think that they're not rehearsing these answers and actually giving us real talk. But you also, I think, see the standout of the series is Daniel Jones. And he hasn't even been in an episode, really. where you're having Shane in the first episode saying, well, Patrick Mahomes couldn't do well with the offensive line that we have. But then at the same time, you hear the Giants really actively looking to get Drake May. And then the trailer for next week's episode was Shane asking Daboll, should the Giants trade up for would you endorse trading up for Jayden Daniels? And Daboll says yes. So they're looking at those two quarterbacks clearly. And you saw the scene at the combine where Joe Shane goes into Elliott Wolf's box at the combine and talks about, hey, don't forget about us if you want to trade out of 3. So they're saying one thing about Daniel Jones and not saying something at the same time. And you see that when they're looking to bring in a quarterback and Tyrod Taylor becomes too expensive, they ultimately bring in Drew Lock. It was cool to kind of see the negotiation play out with John Runyon, where somebody from the front office goes, the Jets offered a little bit more. Do we want to go up? Shane's like, yes, we do. And they end up getting the deal done, but it cost them another player in the process because they wanted to get a couple offensive linemen in this free agency, which is clear that's what the Giants wanted to address. So I'm interested to see what happens going forward with the draft episodes. I think those are going to be really interesting to see the war room in real time and to see what's going on, but to kind of get a glimpse of that first few hours of NFL free agency where it's nonstop is going to be something to watch. Now, the Giants did get some bad news this week. Theo Johnson, their rookie tight end at Penn State, is going to start training camp on the physically unable to perform list. That's a big deal, considering he was in competition with Daniel Bellinger for the tight end job with Darren Waller retired. So what happens there? Does that cost Johnson some valuable reps going into the season? We'll see. But again, we'll talk about training camp a little bit more next week. But as rookies go into camp, that's a big deal for Johnson, as training camp will start for the vets for both these teams on July 23rd. So now let's dive into the Jets. And when we talk Jets, we talk Davante Adams. And, of course, his name was in the rumor mill this week. And I think you look at the situation right now, you kind of understand why Davante Adams would be unhappy in Vegas. He's not going to say it publicly right now because it's training camp. I don't think he wants to make a scene. But at the same time, I think he understands this isn't probably the place he signed up for long-term when he wanted out of Green Bay to go to Vegas. And ultimately, Aaron Rodgers, his best buddy, playing quarterback over here. And if Aaron Rodgers is truly running the scenes, you would think there's a chance that between now and the trade deadline, this gets done, especially if the Raiders right out of the gate aren't exactly in the best position to win. They're looking to take advantage of a team trying to get desperately for a win, aka the Jets, and sort of make this into fruition, because you're seeing this roster on the Jets completely ready. They were doing these top 10s on ESPN of positions, and like 3 or 4 guys are Jets. So they have a roster that's built to win now. And the question that Joe Douglas has to ask himself on the hot seat, is it worth giving up a first rounder next year for Adams or even Brandon Ayuk, who requested a trade out of San Francisco? I don't see the Niners making a deal with the Jets, especially before week 1, because, of course, those two teams play each other. And the problem with Ayuk going anywhere is Ricky Pearsall, the Niners rookie wide receiver. He's going to start the year, I think, on the injured list, restricted list, whatever you want to call it. But this is a clear position of need for the Jets. After Garrett Wilson, you're looking at Mike Williams. Mike Williams is not reliable because of his injuries. So when you have the extra third you can throw in there, and I think if you're really good, that first rounder in 25 doesn't matter. It's a late 20s pick. You need to go all in with this roster. That's the only chance you have to win. When you sign Aaron Rodgers, you are making that effort to go all out and win. Davante Adams helps you do that. And it takes pressure off Garrett Wilson. Imagine Wilson as a number 2 in this offense. I think you put up even more numbers, especially with Breece Hall at running back. You would have a really good trio of weapons for Rodgers to work with, especially after this team revamped the offensive line in free agency via the trades with Simpson, Moses Morgan. They've done a good job, I think, revamping that group. So we'll see ultimately what happens, but I think that's going to be a storyline to watch, is especially if the receiver group doesn't start off well, the Davante Adams rumor is only going to get louder and louder for this team. So I was talking about NFL training camp, and that's why we have a huge show next week. So, of course, same time, but it's going to be mainly football. We've done a lot of baseball and basketball, and we'll do some of those things as well. But training camp will start. We'll do our top 5 Giants and Jets storylines to the season. And what's also cool, next week is ACC and Big Ten Media Days. So we will talk Syracuse. We'll preview Kyle McCord's season with the Orange and with their new coaching staff and see what they do. And Rutgers with Greg Schiano, of course, with Oregon and Washington and USC in the Big Ten. What does that mean for the Scarlet Knights? I think this is a team that with a schedule it's pretty favorable for Rutgers. They don't have a lot of those top opponents like the Ohio States, the Michigans, that they could really take advantage and have a strong year with the right things going their way. So NFL and college football next week here on the network. We will dive a significant portion of the show into those things, and we'll talk about what the coaches say at Media Day. I'm going to get into a couple comments before we go to our first break. Our Alden, our Arizona show. Glad we're growing here on the network. Glad to hear from you, my buddy Dennis. How the heck are you, man? I'm sure you enjoyed the Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams discourse we just had. But again, we are growing on the network. And Jen, I agree. Kyle McCord, Ohio State, yeah, I think was too much for him. I think going into Syracuse under the radar on the ACC, I think he's going to do some good things. I got to see what his playmakers look like. Obviously, the playmakers at Ohio State were a lot better than the playmakers at Syracuse. But I think in the ACC, the Orange, especially with a new rejuvenated focus, could get off to a good start this year. But we'll do all that next week. So let's take our first break. We will come back and we will talk Knicks. Jalen Brunson taking less money. What does it mean? Is he crazy? And has the Knicks front office really changed the perception of this team overnight? We'll dive into that next here on New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all their sports. We'll be right back after this.
What's up, everybody? This is Darren Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you. Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No, not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on The Defining Moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
A lot of defining moments here in sports over the summer. We've got the Open Championship going on. It's a lot of a global way here on the network because we are global here on IE Sports Radio. So welcome back to New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all those sports. We'll dive into some of those global things later with the soccer. Of course, the crazy scene in Miami at Copa America. Can that actually happen at MetLife? I don't know. And, of course, the big event going on in golf next year in the New York area that we will dive into. But let's talk some Knicks. And the big story, of course, from a couple weeks ago, Jalen Brunson electing to take his big extension now and not wait into next year. 4 years, $156 million, when he could have made over $200 million in a 5-year extension next year. I know there are a lot of people saying this guy's crazy to give up that personal of a sacrifice. But Jalen Brunson is betting on himself. He is betting that, hey, this TV rights deal is only going to get bigger if I have a good next 3-4 years. I could make even more money or make a similar amount of money going forward. But it shows you the commitment that Jalen Brunson has to the Knicks. The Knicks took a chance on him, gave him a lot of money. Remember, they overpaid for him in free agency. When the connection was obviously there between his dad, who's now a coach on the staff, and the whole thing with the Dallas Mavericks, they overpaid. So to have now a chance where they drastically underpay, and it's Brunson electing to take the underpay. And it shows you he's kind of got control, but doesn't have control at the same time. What do I mean by that? Usually when the superstar takes the most money in a sport, they're kind of wheeling and dealing behind the scenes, i.e. LeBron James of the Lakers. I think if you want to look at it with New York, you can make the case that Aaron Judge is kind of taking the role of being behind the scenes with the Yankees. And as Dennis says here, Jalen Brunson wants to win. He's committed to bringing a championship to the Knicks. And I think that's absolutely true. This is a Knicks team that is fully engrossed in winning a championship. When you've got Brunson taking less money, you have a potential with Mikal Bridges taking less money next year when he has a chance in the extension. That's a big deal. When you have stars like that willing to take less money to create the common good. You could argue OG Anunoby did the same thing. It's just not been as heralded. So the Knicks are set up both for the future to still make those moves they need to make, but also to go forward and necessarily don't have to worry about staying under that cap apron that we've been talking about, the first apron, the second apron. Right now they're I think under the second apron, which is good news for them. They still have to make more moves, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you're seeing commitment to winning, and you're seeing players want to be here. That's a big deal. Keep in mind, the Knicks used to have to beg people to show up to play at the Garden. They used to have to throw big money at guys with aging that were up there in age, that had bad knees, that really didn't fit, but they had to make a splash just to make a splash. They don't have to do that anymore. Now they can really look at what fits. So give Leon Rose and World Wide West a lot of credit. They've done a good job in that front office. They don't talk a lot. They're kind of like the Oz behind the curtain. They don't have a lot of press conferences, which makes the Bridges press conference interesting. You actually have to hear from them. But they do a lot of really interesting things. And I think Tom Thibodeau has helped change the culture. You can tell a lot of these players want to play for Tom Thibodeau. Does it mean it's necessarily going to lead to a championship? I'm not so sure. But for right now, you've got to feel really good if the New York Knicks, both with free agency. I think they've done a really good job there. They still could use another big man going forward. We'll dive into that. But I think even the draft, and as we talk about the draft, they end up getting, we talked about their first round pick on our last show. I love what they did in the second round, especially with Tyler Kolek, getting him out of Marquette. This is the guy I've watched a lot in the Big East, being a St. John's alum and a St. John's fan. And he does a good job of being a leader on the team. He shoots the three. He's a good defender. He impacts a game, and you're seeing that in the summer league. Remember last night against Sacramento, he gets the N1 at the end of the game. Now, it is just summer league, but this is a guy that's really going to provide a good boost off the bench. And maybe if the Knicks have to get that big man, Kolek could replace Deuce McBride if they have to make a trade and give up a young player to make a deal. So they've kind of reinforced their point guard position, and Kolek could fill in for a minute or two for Brunson and kind of still initiate the offense. So I kind of like that move. The move to get Kevin McCullough out of Kansas late in the second round. McCullough was a big impact on the Jayhawks. You can tell they missed him in the NCAA tournament, getting him in the late second round. So using those second round picks to their advantage is something I like to see out of those two guys. Then the Knicks go out and they add Cam Payne. He used to play for the Sixers. He was a big factor in game 3 of that first round series when Philly needed some bench scoring. Payne provided that. I think Payne can do the same thing here, be another sharpshooter off the bench. And he is best friends with Mikal Bridges from Phoenix. So you're talking about, again, another player. They don't have to worry about chemistry or playing together or any of that thing. They could dive right in. So when you have guys that already are familiar with each other, it'll only help you long term. So I like that. Which means we've got to find a big man. And to do that, I think they're going to have to go through a trade. 2 names have been thrown out there. Walker Kessler of the Jazz, Nick Richards of the Hornets. I prefer Kessler. But again, here's the one guy in the room that's going to probably mess up the Walker Kessler stuff. Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge, you can tell, does not want to make the Knicks any better. And you saw that with the Donovan Mitchell stuff. You could argue the Knicks had a better deal on the table for Donovan Mitchell. They sent him to Cleveland. You could clearly see if there's a better deal for Kessler, who's still a very young player. He's just been in summer league. They'll be willing to go the extra mile to trade him somewhere other than New York. So maybe you have to settle for a Richards, who's a good depth piece. They don't need a star big man. They just need depth. They need something behind Mitchell Robinson and Jericho Sims. So they don't have to break the bank to get a big man. I think they'll get one. It may take longer than people expected. I think a lot of us thought the Knicks would find that before Summer League and before really free agency lost its apex. But I think they'll end up making a move. They've got the pieces to do it. You'll still see the crazy Julius Randle trade rumors out there. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. You've seen like the big Karl Anthony Towns talk. I don't think that's happening, especially at Minnesota in pursuit of a title. There's so much that they have to focus on. So to me, that's a big deal to talk about another time. Getting into some of the comments, Dennis, I agree with you. The center position is really the big worry on this team. I think they do have to find a top-of-the-line player, and we will see what happens with that. Ralph saying it's going to be a big battle next year, Knicks, Sixers, and Celtics. Look, I like the Paul George stuff, but here's the problem if you're Philly. They don't really have that chemistry. When you're talking about with big threes, you want to see chemistry right out of the gate. Even when you had Wade, LeBron, and Bosh in Miami, they didn't click right away. So Philly's going to have to try to go through the growing pains of Maxey and Embiid and George and try to fit all those things together. But I do think right now those are the top three, and you can't sleep on Milwaukee. Remember, they still have Giannis and Lillard and Chris Middleton and those guys. They're going to come back, and Doc gets a full year with them. So I think they're going to be in contention as well. So a lot going on there. Let's talk baseball real quick. Yankees and Mets. First half in the books. Personally, I'm not a fan of the home run derby. I think they've changed the rules too much. Pete Alonso didn't shine as much as you would like him to. And we'll get to that with the Mets. I think that kind of took away from potentially Brandon Nimmo and Francisco Lindor being all-stars. The All-Star game was cool, but please get rid of those ugly jerseys. They're terrible. But let's talk about the Yankees. What happened to the offense? Like, this is a team that's got Aaron Judge, who's got 34 home runs. Juan Soto had a really good first half. And you can't just say it's the Giancarlo Stanton injury. Because, remember, this is the same GM and Brian Cashman that said we had to account for Stanton being injured at some point in the year. That doesn't change the fact that Gleyber Torres was disappointing in the first half. DJ LeMahieu hasn't done really much of anything. The Yankees offense has really been saved, quote unquote. Ben Rice, who's been fantastic since coming up, be it the big 3-run homer off Craig Kimbrell, the last game before the All-Star break, and then the 3-homer game against Boston. I think Austin Wells is going to shine now that Jose Trevino is out with that grade 2 strain in his calf, that now he'll get a primary shot behind the plate. He's been a big boost to this team, but you need to see more from this offense. Alex Verdugo had a good first 6 weeks. Now he's been mediocre. Trent Grisham can't hit his way out of a paper bag in center field. That's a problem. They don't have a consistency, and they keep doing the little things wrong. They keep messing up their fundamentals. They make sloppy errors in the field. And it makes you wonder what happened to the team that was so dominant those first 2 months. And they've done this each of the last 3 years, which makes you wonder, has the message gone wrong with Aaron Boone? And my answer to that is, I don't think Aaron Boone is the complete reason to blame here at the Yankees, but when I see a team make the same mistakes over and over, not hustling, not making the routine play, and you saw it in the 9th inning on Sunday. Anthony Volpe botches a ground ball that would have won the game, and Alex Verdugo misplays a ball in left field, trips over himself, when the Yankees could have swept the Orioles, made a statement, and I don't want to hear from Boone that this team is competing. That's the bare minimum what you should be as a baseball team. I'm not going out and celebrating that they went 3-3 against Tampa and Baltimore to end the break. They still had an awful last 5 to 6 weeks where their all-star closer has 6 blown saves and didn't appear in the all-star game. When he got picked for the all-star game, didn't pitch. Clay Holmes isn't the problem, but you have a case where you have a closer that totally relies on sinker stuff, ground balls, and contact, not strikeouts. That's a problem. And I think when you look at Aaron Boone, look, we've talked about this before on the show. I don't expect my manager to go out and pick a player out of a hat and rip him to shreds in the media. But when you make a stupid play, I think that player can even say, look, I deserve the right to get called out. And sometimes Boone has to throw the fans one. I know the Yankees don't want him to, but you can't keep saying the same stuff. Oh, we're going to get right to it. It's all in front of us. I don't care if it's all in front of you. I really don't. Because he said this last year. He said it the year before that. And that's mixed messaging. Is that the messaging you want from a championship or a bust team? Because I don't. I want a manager that's at least going to say, look, we need to get our heads out of our you-know-what and get going. And he's in the last year of his deal. Yankees mess up and they don't get to at least a championship series, Boone's getting fired, as he should. There has to be accountability in New York. And when you have Boone not give the accountability or even wait till days after to give the accountability, at least publicly, that to me is a problem. So the question is, can the trade deadline really fix the Yankees? I don't think it can fix everything. They need relief pitching that isn't Mason Miller. I'm not giving up the farm for Mason Miller. As good as he was in the All-Star game, I don't think that you can really expect to get a closer, have him for 4 years, and expect to be the same all 4 years. You need to find controllable relief pitching. A name like Carlos Estevez with the Angels makes sense. They could go out and maybe a Kyle Finnegan from Washington or Derek Law. They're going to try to find a couple of relievers. Tanner Scott from the Marlins, I think would be the guy I would go for. Could they use a starter? Sure. But I think they're going to bank on Clark Schmidt coming back. And then trying to get that bat off the bench that could provide versatility. They don't need a Vlad Jr., but I think you need utility parts. So Cashman's got to find a way to meet all these needs and not give up the farm, i.e. Spencer Jones. Spencer Jones should not be involved in any deal unless, again, it's Mason Miller, maybe Garrett Crochet. But that's about the first thing I would do. Like, I like the idea of Jazz Chisholm coming and bringing the spark, but every time the Yankees try to bring in some guy that gives them an edge like Donaldson or Verdugo, it ends up putting egg on their face. So stop going for the spark and go for the talent. So I don't think they can go that direction. Before we get to the Mets, Dennis chimes in. The Yankees will be fine, but I do say they're very lucky Baltimore's been bad. Look, the Orioles have been bad. Craig Kimbrell has done, I think, a mediocre job at closer, but the Orioles are going to go out and get guys. There's the rumors that they're looking to get Tarek Skubal from the Tigers. If they do, it only enhances their rotation, but they've kind of fallen as of late. And outside of two bats, they have nothing consistent. Absolutely. Really, right now, Ben Rice has been better than Anthony Rizzo. So the only thing you can say, they miss Stanton. And it sounds like Stan could be back shortly after the break, which will really help this team. Going to the Mets, Brandon Nimmo and Francisco Lindor have been excellent. I had this debate with people that I know who are Met fans that they talked about the snubs for the All-Star game. I think Nimmo definitely got snubbed. Guy hit over 320 since June. He's been one of the better outfielders in the league. Clearly, the Mets, I think, have benefited from his contract. I think with the outfield options, Nimmo was a better one. Lindor was tough to justify because he did have the mediocre April, and Ellie De La Cruz was in the All-Star game. C.J. Abrams was the Nationals representative, and I was looking at Lindor and Abrams side by side. They're about the same player. I know you could look at analytics and says differently, but that being said, Lindor deserves a lot of credit for turning the season around, and those top two guys have really changed everything, whether it's Mark Vientos, who's been a revelation at third base. They have found things offensively, especially with J.D. Martinez resurging as well, and they haven't had Starling Marte for the bulk of the year. So the Mets offense is in good shape. I don't think they really have to make a move there to help the team. The big thing they're going to need is bullpen help. Jose Buto has been doing a really good job late innings. I think he needs to stay there. Carlos Mendoza needs to treat him kind of like the Yankees used to treat Michael King and going a different direction there. They need a bridge to Edwin Diaz and a reliable bridge to Edwin Diaz. So if you're David Stearns, you have to address the bullpen going into the deadline. They did add Phil Maton from the Rays, which I like, but they have to do more. There's really no excuse. Right now, if the season ended today, they would be the third wild card. They're only 4 behind the Braves, and they play the Braves not this weekend, but next weekend. They could really do some damage. They're going to get Kodai Senga back probably next week. He's going to make one more rehab start, which is big. So I don't think they need to add a starter. If anything, there's talks they could deal a starter. Someone like a Jose Quintana, who's maybe helped himself in recent weeks. But the Mets, bullpen. Stearns needs to add multiple relievers for this team to do well. The problem is, with 2 weeks to go, this is a seller's market. You're going to only have an opportunity to add one or two things because there's only so many teams right now selling. We'll see how it looks 2 weeks from now, but that's a big thing. And one more thing on the baseball note, schedule came out for next year. Yankees Mets 4th of July at Citi Field. That is going to be fantastic. I applaud the schedules for actually putting the Yankees and Mets in kind of that national stage and that kind of week. That will play next week, but it kind of gets lost in the shuffle. To get a nationwide 4th of July matchup, we used to see it kind of late June, early July with these teams. You kind of get that now, but I think that was a real highlight. Mets will open the year in Houston next year. Yankees will open at home against Milwaukee. Ralph, I agree. Jake Diekman is terrible. Dennis says the same thing. Look, bullpen's a mess with the Mets. They have to fix it. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's really the one thing holding this team back from really making a push, especially when you consider Christian Scott's right there. They've got the starting rotation. Their offense is back on track. Get some bullpen help. Both New York teams need relievers, but will they find them in the next 2 weeks? We'll see. So we'll take one more break. We'll come back. We'll talk about some of the other sports in the area. We'll talk Liberty. What a first half they've had. They are by far the best team going forward, but we'll dive into all of that next here on New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all their sports. We'll take one more break and wrap up episode 44 after this.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter at any time. Be happy to reply. Always willing to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's good, everyone? It's Drewski, the host of Heart of Texas Sports on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. On this station, we cover everything in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area. From we cover the Dallas Cowboys, the Dallas Stars, Dallas Mavericks, Dallas Wings, Texas Rangers, TCU, SMU, we cover it all right here every Wednesdays from 9 to 10 p.m. Central Time. Make sure you stay live with me on the Heart of Texas Sports on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Make sure to check out Drewski's show. A lot of fun. He's got a cool NFL blitz machine in the background, which is great. Welcome back to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all the sports. Ricky Keeler here with you, wrapping up episode 44. Good night for Drewski's Dallas Wings last night. Caitlin Clark gets 19 assists, yet they still find a way to get a win. Dallas has been not very good on the WNBA slate first half, which first half has come to a close. And the New York Liberty, I'm telling you, if you haven't gotten to a game, and I haven't been to a game yet this year, you got to get to one. This team really has made something special over the summer. They are 21-4 on the season. And you look at their 4 losses, they lost once to Chicago at home, twice to Minnesota, who's one of the better teams in the league, and then got triple-doubled by Caitlin Clark and the Fever. Besides that, they have responded every single time to the point where you got other teams making moves. Connecticut, who they just beat the other day, Connecticut's lost them 3 times. You saw the Sun yesterday go out and make a trade with Chicago to get Mabry to improve their 3-point shooting. They are clearly making moves now to try to beat the Liberty because the Liberty have established themselves as the best team in the WNBA. And I don't want to hear about, oh, well, Vegas is this, Vegas is that. And I get Vegas is the defending champions. But you can't ignore that this core has come together and found something, especially these last 2 games without Brianna Stewart in the lineup. She got some rest before the Olympic break. They beat Chicago on the road, and they actually hold Angel Reese without a double-double. It was actually really fun because at the end of the game, when Reese really wants that last basket, the Liberty are triple teaming her and putting 4 people on her so she doesn't score. I thought that was really interesting and really fun. They really got under Chicago's skin in that game between Angel Reese and Teresa Weatherspoon and all the technicals that Chicago got. They could really use some veteran experience with that group. But they got that win. Then 2 nights later against Connecticut, Sabrina Ionescu is carrying this team. She picked up 30 points in 37 minutes. She has 13 30-plus point games in her career. That breaks Cappie Pondexter's all-time Liberty record. And it's just her 3rd year in the league. And I was reading some quotes from Sandy Brondello, the coach, even the Connecticut coach. And they were talking about how Ionescu has grown up in year 3 more than a lot of people even have expected. And we could talk about the MVP race all you want. She should be in that conversation because she not only is a great 3-point shooter, she's an excellent facilitator of the basketball. She gets her teammates involved. And to me, that's a big deal when you look at this group because the pick and roll chemistry she has with Jonquel Jones and Brianna Stewart has been a lot of fun. She has been, I think, I would say she's a top 7 New York athlete right now. And that's big when you consider all the sports here. She is a national brand herself. She's not going to be in the 3-point contest this weekend, but you understand she's got to worry about Team USA and all those things. And they'll have that exhibition Saturday with the WNBA All-Stars in Phoenix. I think it's 8:30 on ABC. But Ionescu's doing her thing, as well as the other role players on the Liberty are doing their thing. When you look at Kennedy Burke, Kayla Thornton, Leona Fibic, Jokic, like you saw Fibic and Jokic kind of make those plays against Chicago that they needed to make in the first half when Chicago was making a run. You've seen Kayla Thornton come out of her shell and really do some good things. Kennedy Burke was getting some starts over Brianna Stewart, and she was doing the little things well, which makes this Liberty team look now 8 or 9 deep. And keep in mind how they got to 21-4. Courtney Vandersloot missing time due to personal reasons. And that's a big 4th player on this team. And they were still able to win. Think about all those games where they had the schedule where they're playing like 4 games in 6 days. And it didn't stop them. The adversity they've gone through in the first 25 games is more than I think people have expected. And there are games you could literally make the case, oh, well, if they lose this game, it's okay. But they don't think that way. They go out there and they win night in and night out. And this team clearly has a chip on their shoulder after losing the finals to Vegas last year. I think they want to go out and make a move. They'll play Vegas coming out of the Olympic break in a month. So I think if you're a Liberty fan, you want to cross your fingers and hope nothing happens to Ionescu and Brianna Stewart in Paris because you need those two. Maybe they get Johannes back, who's playing for France. She can shoot the 3. That would be a big thing for them as well. Do they make a move at the deadline to try to bolster themselves? We're going to find out. But as good as Connecticut has been and Minnesota and Vegas, because you could take one of those 2 Minnesota losses and not cancel it, but that game was at UBS. So really, I think they've led 3.5 losses. I don't like putting asterisks on games, but I'll put one on that because the Liberty beat them the next week in their actual home gym. So overall, I really like what this team is doing. I'm looking forward to hopefully getting to a game in September when they have plenty of home games. I think they play Vegas like September 8th at home. It's a Sunday. And yes, that's football season. That's week 1. But that's still a really excellent game. It's going to be a great crowd for that as well. So for this weekend, Jonquel Jones is in the 3-point contest. That'll be Friday night, the skills challenge, which will be pretty fun. So you get a chance to watch her there. Moving on to some soccer. NYCFC had a tough one last night. They were down 2 goals 40 minutes into their match against Atlanta. Then they get 2 goals in the second half. Talis Magno scores a penalty kick in the 80th minute. A big 2-2 draw. They get a point on the road. This is still an NYCFC team that struggles on the road. Only 3 wins away from their home pitch this year. But to come back from 2 goals down and essentially steal one, they had to call up a lot of those guys from the MLS Next squad. The guy that stands out to me is Max Carrizo, 16 years old. He's got a shot to, I think, really be another face in the future of U.S. soccer, which could get NYCFC ties. We'll get into that in a minute with their next coach. But Carrizo could be one of those guys that has a lot of talent. Remember, he was signed as a 14-year-old. So there's really a big future for him. Philly had a guy, I think, that was like a teenager himself get into a game last night, which is really cool. Red Bulls, they also had a tie last night, 2-2 against Montreal. A lot of drama in that second half. And the Red Bulls actually keep their undefeated home streak alive, which is big. I mean, that's considering a team that's right now, if you look at the standings, the Red Bulls are 4th in the MLS. NYCFC is 5th. So both these teams in really good position for a playoff spot. NYCFC is home to Chicago is at Orlando this week. Red Bulls are home to Cincinnati. And then they take a little bit of a break from MLS play. They got the Leagues Cup coming up. So maybe we'll do some Leagues Cup next week or the week after. But you're starting to see kind of the unofficial first half of the MLS coming to a close, especially with the All-Star game as well. The interesting thing with NYCFC, Patrick Vieira, who's been a coach out in France, has been one of the names rumored for the Team USA job with Greg Berhalter out. He was good with New York for a while. They didn't win they eventually moved on from him and won the MLS Cup with the next coach they got. But Vieira helped them when they were in the early stages of their franchise's history. He hasn't had the same success in other places, but it'd be kind of interesting from a New York angle if Vieira does get that job. I don't think he will. There's a lot of talk still about other names, but name that floated out there that I found interesting on the soccer front. And hopefully 2 years from now, MetLife Stadium doesn't turn into the craziness that Hard Rock was on Sunday. That was a joke. What happened in Miami, that Argentina-Colombia match started an hour and a half later than it was supposed to. Security was terrible. You could argue it was a perfect storm with both those fan bases there, but people talk about what happened at MetLife. I think MetLife does a really fantastic job with big events, but I don't think they have to worry about the final in 26 being stopped from something like that. To me, that was an anomaly. I don't think it'll happen again. But it really was a really bad stain for people trusting, can the U.S. really do things with the World Cup in 26 and the stage that this country will be on, both from a team perspective and a country perspective, how they handle this event. We didn't get a chance to do NHL, so I figure we dive into some free agency, talk about what's gone on over the last few weeks. Devils, I think, huge winners. Huge winners. They go out and get Brett Pesce. They get Brendan Dillon. They re-signed Tomas Tatar, bringing him back to New Jersey. The Devils have clearly established this is their time to win. And they have to establish those pieces. They need help on defense. Dillon's going to help there. They steal Pesce from Carolina. I think New Jersey's done a good job establishing veteran pieces around their younger players. Remember, they got Markstrom in late June to help their goalie situation with Jake Allen. So the Devils, I think, are in a good position. Rangers, on the other hand, I don't know what they're doing, and it kind of really makes me wonder what's Chris Drury really thinking about. Keep in mind, they did add some pieces. They got Sam Carrick. They got Riley Smith in the trade with the Penguins. But they really haven't done much else. And Chris Drury, we were looking to see, would this team really make a regrouping? Did they have to blow it up necessarily? No. Because I still think they're a top 3 to 4 team in the East next year. But what's really been lost in this is not just they haven't signed anybody, it's the whole Jacob Trouba stuff. Jacob Trouba Of course, we talked about it a few weeks ago. Team went to him looking for his list of no trades. And whether you want to believe it or not, and a lot of talk was around Detroit. And then when Trouba supposedly found out it was Detroit, he decided to invoke the no trade and not go. There's a whole thing with New York with his wife, with the residency, which is interesting. I've seen tweets around like Buffalo, but they've created a lot with their captain, and they've messed that up. Because the question is going to be, how do you bring your captain back after you put him through all these trade rumors and all this craziness that maybe wasn't caused by the Rangers? You could argue, yes, it was reporting and things like that. Nevertheless, it's out there. So Chris Drury's got to play damage control. Now, he could do what he did with Barclay Goodrow and just waive him, because the Rangers are trying to get more money on the cap to make a significant move if they need to. But the significant move hasn't been out there. And the Rangers weren't able to do what Nashville did and get practically every superstar under the sun to come there. The Stamkos, Marchessault, the list goes on and on. They got everybody. Rangers really struck out in this process. They didn't land anybody. Patrick Kane goes back to Detroit. Tarasenko doesn't come back. He ends up signing with somewhere else. So they're really missing that big spark. Do they need it? No. But now you're in a huge year where Igor Shesterkin's in a contract year, Keandre Miller's in a contract year, Alexi Lafreniere is in a contract year. Do they try to get any of those guys to re-sign with some of the money that they got? Or do they let that play out in next summer? So again, Devils, big winners. Rangers, I'm still looking to see what they actually do, because I'm not sure what they're doing. Islanders, I really like the move to get Anthony Duclair. Patrick Waugh coached them in juniors. I think that's a guy that you gotta like what they did in adding another scorer into the mix in Long Island. So Lou Lamoriello doing some things there with the Islanders. We'll wrap up the show this week with a little golf. Now, why do I want to bring up some golf? It was like, well, the Open's on, but that's not why. The Ryder Cup is in Bethpage Black in Long Island in 25. And a lot of the talk before the last weeks or so was that Tiger Woods would be the captain. And to think you could have the Ryder Cup, Long Island, Tiger Woods, of course, he's won at Bethpage, the place would go crazy. And there was also the talk of it being maybe Tiger versus Sergio, if Sergio Garcia becomes the captain of Team Europe. Well, the U.S. goes a different direction. Keegan Bradley is going to be the captain. Could potentially be a playing captain if he qualifies under the player qualifications for the Ryder Cup. Now, when I first heard this, I thought, oh, how'd they turn down Tiger? Tiger actually turned this down because he's been doing some things with the PGA. You could understand it, and you have to wonder if maybe Tiger in New York, as much as we'd all love to see it, wasn't the best thing. Keegan Bradley on the surface is an out-of-the-box hire to be a captain. But the U.S. got embarrassed in Europe a couple years ago. Keegan is kind of that guy he got turned down for that team by Zach Johnson. He brings in a new level of rejuvenation, fresh air, emotion. He is a St. John's alum, so he's very familiar with the area, very familiar in the Northeast. And he's a fan favorite, former PGA champion. So if you kind of bring him in, maybe you get Phil Mickelson involved or something like that, and to have a playing captain and somebody that brings that emotional energy into the mix, I think is only going to help this group, because this U.S. golf team has a lot of talent on it. I mean, even if Tiger doesn't play in 25, you got JT, Jordan Spieth, Scotty Scheffler, Xander Schauffele, Patrick Cantlay, list goes on and on. They've got the Brooks Koepka. They've got the talent. They kind of need that boost that Keegan Bradley can provide, and you clearly tell this guy wanted this position. It's a name everybody's familiar with that they still watch play in the PGA. And ultimately, one of the events I would love to go to is a Ryder Cup, because you talk about golf and people talk about the atmospheres. It's more of a quiet game. The Ryder Cup, when you watch on TV, the energy, the kind of the war between U.S. and European fans is so much fun, especially Sunday singles. When you get that match play, you're seeing who's trying to get that half a point, and you've got all the players rallying around at the end, supporting their team. trying to win. You don't get that team atmosphere a lot. Even in the Olympics this year in Paris, there's no team competition. I think they're trying to get that in 28 in LA. But I really like this move. It might not work. It might turn out horrifically wrong. But give the U.S. credit for kind of taking a different approach and moving on and going with Keegan Bradley. So we had a couple big shows coming up for you. Of course, 4 shows tonight. Magic City Sports at 7 o'clock. The Extra Mile. We're going to do some racing at 8 o'clock. I'm sure they'll talk about the news at the Brickyard. Could be coming back to NASCAR, which is going to be cool. And then, of course, our debut of our St. Louis show coming up at 10 o'clock. I'm sure there'll be a lot of cool Cardinals talk. They'll be competing with the Mets for the wild card, which should be a lot of fun. We got the Arizona show, St. Louis show. We are growing as a network this summer, and you want to get along for the ride. So be sure to do that. Again, I'm going to tell you to be sure to go to @IESportsRadio, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, all those cool things. We are growing. We want you to grow along with us. It's been a really fun time, and we're only getting started. Football's coming up. I'm excited to get into some football. I'll be doing some Jets and Giants preview stuff with Larry over the next couple of weeks. We go to the 3 and Out stuff, which is going to be pretty cool to talk some football. Haven't decided yet if we're going to do any special shows during the season. I'll try to get into that toward August if we do maybe a quick end of game podcast or something like that. But I'm looking forward to having a football season here, which is going to be a lot of fun, and we'll see where it goes from there. So as we wrap up this show here, again, Hard Knocks, I love it. I look forward to it every week. But I don't know why the Giants kept revealing so much. They don't need to reveal so much. And what does it mean for Daniel Jones in a make or break year, battling injury, to kind of see all this stuff around other quarterbacks watching this show? I'm sure he knows some of it, but I'm interested to see his dynamic going into a big year for him if he's able to play. Jets, time to go all in and get that wide receiver. Devontae Adams is available, go get him. Go find a way to get him. It doesn't matter what it costs, because your goal is to get as far as you can in 2024 while Aaron Rodgers is healthy. So that's a big deal. Can the Yankees bounce back in the second half? Through all their struggles, they're right there in the division, right there in the wild card. Brian Cashman's got to make a move. We'll see what they do in the next few weeks. And David Stearns, the Mets have earned the right to be buyers. Do not make the same mistake you made in Milwaukee and try to sell and buy at the same time, because it will blow up in your face, especially in this town. So the Mets hosting the Marlins, going to Miami this week, and then playing the Yankees, and then playing Atlanta. Big next 10 games for the Mets to show they belong. Summer League going on for the Knicks. Free agency in the NHL. The Olympic break going on. So again, next week, mainly football here on the show. Jets, Giants. We're going to talk Syracuse football, Rutgers football. They might even get me to do some upstate football. Maybe we'll talk some Ithaca and Portland football next week. We're about a month away from the college football season. So mainly football next week, 2 p.m. Eastern, Thursday. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. Stay cool out there from all of us here at IE Sports Radio, New York State Sports. I'm Mr. Keeler saying enjoy the rest of your week. I'll see you back here next week for a special training camp, college football edition of New York State Sports. We will see you then.